Welcome to the lesson recording for week 3 for Green Design and Technology. So you can see that week 3 is April 15th through 21. Of course, 15th is Monday, 21st is the following Sunday. You can do the work however you want, but ideally you'd get it done by Friday of the week. So we look at week 3, you can see that we're starting into the content for the course. You'll of course watch this recording like you're doing, do the Class Connect write-up. And for week 3, you're going through the section presentation, and we're only going to cover lessons 1, 2, and 3 for now. So you can see lesson 1 talks about environment, ecology, resources, things like that. Lesson 2 is all about different types of systems, and lesson 3 is impact of people on the environment. In week 4, we'll pick up lessons 4 and 5. But the one thing you want to do when you go through the lesson is you want to complete the study questions, and I'll show you how to do that. So here we are in the course, and if I scroll down, well, actually before we jump into, just a couple of things to remind you. If you haven't done week 1 or week 2, please get those done first before you move on to this stuff. So here we are in section 3. You can see that this class has 6 sections. So we're in section 1, I should say. And you're going to go right into the section 1 presentation in a minute. But there are also study questions. So the study questions, that's going to be the assignment work that you'll do for the week. So on the study questions, you'll just highlight them all, then copy into a word processor. And since this week is just sections 1 through 3, then these are lessons 1 through 3. Then these are going to be the ones you'll answer for this week. And then next week you'll answer the ones for 4 and 5, and then you'll turn in the whole thing next week. But for this week, don't worry about that. And you can turn it into the Dropbox is the best way to do it. But of course it does have a file name here, because you want to save it as that file name as you're going along. And then you copy and paste from that word processor and then turn it into the Dropbox. So that'll be the lesson that you'll do. The study questions that you'll do later as you go through this recording, the lesson presentation yourself, the section presentation yourself. If we go to section 1, so here we are in section 1, you can see that it is made up of a bunch of different lessons, and again we're just going through lessons 1, 2, and 3 today. Now in the Class Connect write-up, you can see that I'm just going to have you for each of the 3 lessons we go through, what are the main topics of the lesson, discuss some of the important concepts from the lesson. And this all needs to be done in well-written paragraphs for each of these things. So let's just jump right into section 1, and now we're into the presentation, the section presentation. So as you look at this, section 1 is all about the environment, and that's this whole section right here. So we're going to look at the natural environment, green design, resources, ozone, global climate change, etc. That's the whole section 1. But lesson 1 talks about the natural environment and ecology, and how man should try to fit into that natural environment. So you can see some of the topics that you look at: environment, and what the natural environment is. So you'll read through this to answer those study questions. So there's a little bit of practice. So as you go through these section presentations, they'll have you do these practices as you go along to see what you know, to see what you've learned. This talks about changes in the environment. So some changes are natural, like a volcano. Some can be man-made, right? We could dam up a river. That changes an environment. Different parts of the natural environment: the air, the water, soil, flora, and fauna. So you go through these slides, I'll call these slides, but each of these individual screens, and they'll tell you about what all of those things are, the parts of the natural environment. Of course, flora and fauna. Flora is like flowers, so it has to do with plants. Then fauna is the animal life in an environment. It's another practice activity. Do that. Now jump into talking about ecology. So some things you may know from science classes. An ecologist is a scientist that studies ecology. So make sure you know what these terms are. They'll not only help you when you do your study questions, but I'm sure it'll help you on the quiz too, the unit quiz. What is ecological design? Design products so they don't harm organisms or the environment. Resources. So there's natural resources, renewable. Of course, renewable are ones that can be used without running out of it. Sunlight and wind are renewable. Trees are considered renewable, although they take a long time to renew, don't they? Practice activities, so again, do those. Now, considering the product. So before man makes a product, you need to think about two things. What is it made of? How is it made? How is it used? So man thinks about that, then mankind can start developing better products that are more environmentally conscious. So you have to consider how the product is made. Is it polluting? Is it going to be polluting when it's made? Is it going to be polluting when it's used? Is it going to be polluting when it's finished being used? So those are all the things that environmental designers need to think about. Another practice activity, so go through that, see how well you do. Green design, designing products that decrease the negative impact on the ecosystem or on the environment. Let's look at those ideas about green design. Bamboo is a really renewable resource because it grows so quickly. So you might see bamboo flooring in some houses, bamboo chairs, things like that. Sustainability is where a process can continue for a long time. So you hear sometimes about sustainable fishing, or they're using methods that allow that fishing to go on and on, allow those fish to grow to the right lengths and things like that. Sustainable design, make products that can be used for a long time in the future. Wouldn't that be great if we had products that lasted a long time so we don't fill up landfills when we purchase a new one and things like that, when you throw out the old ones. So lots of different things about sustainability. So characteristics of sustainability, look at all things, really important component to think about as you think about protecting the environment. Or practice activity. So designing for the environment, that's what lesson 1 was about. You can see the different components of designing for the environment and the things that you learned about. So again, if we go to the Class Connect write-up, hopefully you came up with answers to this. And you could write a substantial couple of nice paragraphs about what lesson 1 was about. Okay, lesson 2. So lesson 2 is all about systems. And from probably science classes you've had, you know that the system is a group of parts that interact with each other. So we have like a school system, right? Is everything that acts together in that school system, in that building. The car engine is a system that takes fuel and electricity to power that car engine. So we know what systems are. How systems work. In every system there's the input and then something that happens along the way and then the output. So like if you have a car, the gasoline is the input, the engine running is the process, and the output is pollution, noise, things like that, right? Or the ultimate output of an automobile. But also, I think the output of the automobile is also the distance traveled. So that's something one needs to think about. Practice activity, so go through that, please. Boundary. So systems have limits. That's what a boundary means, a limit. So it's the limit to the things that are in a system. So those are important because when systems are limited, then the output cannot be unlimited. There's a definite limit to the output too. So thinking on a system basis. So when you start thinking about systems, then you think about the whole thing rather than just individual parts of the system. It's also what holistic means. It's a whole system approach rather than just certain pieces of it. Practice activity, so go through that. Models is a way where you can create a design to see how the system would work. So let's say somebody was planning to make a dam on a river. Well, they could make a model of that dam and run it through a computer program to see what would be the effect of damming up that river, and what would it flood behind the dam and things like that. How would it affect the water going downstream? And then predictions can be made on that model, and those predictions can be used to determine or to make decisions. Another practice activity, make sure you do that. So system dynamics is how systems work and studying how systems work. So go through it so you can see, stock is a part of the system that can be measured. The flows is the pathway or how things run within the system. And then finally the feedback loop, and that tells you how things were changed throughout that system. So the effects of what that system did. Practice activity, go through that. Now we get into ecosystem. So of course, we know what system is, so eco would be ecological system. So that's the system in which we live in the natural environment, the ecosystem. An ecosystem can be made up of natural and unnatural. An ecosystem is essentially where one lives. In summary, so in this lesson we talked about systems, and we looked at all these different components of a system. So again, for the Class Connect write-up, you are discussing what some of the main topics are and what the important concepts of the lesson are. 2 well-developed paragraphs for each of these. In lesson 3, now we're going to get into human impact on the environment. So the built environment is the area that humans have created. So of course you know what your built environment is. You can describe your built environment, where you live, where you go to the grocery store, things like that. Resource depletion, that's when natural resources are depleted faster than they can be replaced. So if we started cutting down trees faster than they grow, then that's depletion. And certainly we do cut trees down faster than they grow, but we plant many, many more trees than we cut down in general. Human population increase. Early 2010, there's 6.8 billion people. That was probably when this class was written. Now there's over 7 billion people. The impact of resource depletion, you can see deforestation. So we're talking about trees that on this specific idea about resource depletion is talking about trees, to give you a real general idea of how trees are important to an ecosystem. So you can bring about species extinction, cause erosion if you don't have trees to stop the water runoff. And then aquifer depletion can be a result of a lot of this. So that's where the groundwater, you have less groundwater than we need. Less groundwater than gets recharged naturally every year. So here's a practice activity, go through that. 4 different types of pollution: air, water, soil. Those are the 3 main types, and then other, of course. There's sound pollution, many different things that sometimes we don't think about. Water pollution, soil pollution, then finally pollution from radiation, pollution from sound, so that's noise pollution, thermal pollution, light pollution. Light pollution is like at night when you have street lights and things like that. So those lights aren't a part of the natural environment, so they are pollutants. Let's go through that practice. Ozone. Now, ozone is a gas. We have naturally occurring ozone. You can see how we have this layer of ozone, high up in our atmosphere. And what ozone does is it stops ultraviolet light from penetrating onto Earth. And ultraviolet light, of course, as this says, can cause skin cancer. So as we deplete the ozone layer, then more of that ultraviolet light can get to the Earth's surface that can affect people. So this talks about ozone depletion, where some of the things that we've done in our environment depletes the ozone layer, so then the ultraviolet rays can come in. So you can see that chlorofluorocarbons, they were released and they depleted the ozone layer. They were called CFCs, but our government got rid of those, could not use them anymore, had to find different things to use in aerosol spray cans and refrigerators and such. So that stopped a lot of the ozone depletion. Ozone holes, you may have heard about this. This was in the 80s. They talk about the ozone hole. I mean, it's naturally occurring. So it occurs and disappears. So whether man actually caused that to happen, who knows? Practice activity, go through that to see what you understood about it. And finally, so that's the end of lesson 3. So again, go to the Class Connect write-up, and there's your write-up about lesson 3. So that went pretty quickly. So you'll go through that section 1 presentation, and you'll answer the study questions for lessons 1, 2, and 3. And you do those in a word processor, and you're welcome to go ahead and move on and go ahead and do the answers for lessons 4 and 5, and then get the whole thing turned in. But again, the way I'd like you to turn it in is into the Dropbox, not as an attached file. And that way I can more easily grade it and give you much better feedback on it, easier feedback. But that's the work for this week. If I go back to the course home, week 3, so you're watching this lesson recording, you're going to complete the Class Connect write-up, then you're going to go through that section 1 presentation, and you're going to do the lessons 1, 2, and 3 study questions. If you want to go on and do lessons 4 and 5 study questions, feel free to do that, and then you can get the study questions turned in. But for this week, you're going to be turning in just the Class Connect write-up. Then next week, week 4, you'll go in and you'll look at lessons 4 or 5, turn in all the study questions for next week, then you have the quiz and the assignment for section 1. So you can see what I've done is I've taken section 1, I've broken it down into 2 weeks to kind of ease you into it. Now sections 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, those are each going to be their own week. But for section 1, I want you all to do well, so I'm giving you 2 weeks to do that work so you can figure out how it all works together. So that's the work for this week, for week 3. And again, if you have not done week 1 and week 2, you need to get those 2 done before you move on to week 3. So that's all I have for you. I look forward to your work coming in. Bye.